For some reason, these keeps telling me to delete videos, and I get concerned when they block the amount of storage in this. It's got 32 gigabytes of storage, and I'm not using it. Strangers are using my storage, and I'm getting concerned that they're forcing me to delete documentation videos, and their asses may be up to no good, forcing me to delete my recordings so that they can falsify some bullshit somewhere. And I'm being forced to delete my videos because it claims I don't have enough storage, which is bullshit. And then they're blocking the recordings. So it's like you have to delete. They don't want documentation of what I record. They do not. So any kind of bullshit from past today and back, it's going to be bullshit if they're making me delete my recordings of shit that has documentation of shit. How about that? But anyways, getting back to my discussion. So after I filed an EEO complaint, they were following me around with a helicopter everywhere I went. And vehicles on the ground were following me by military men wearing fatigue uniform, khaki pants, their fatigue pants, camouflage. And so they were following me everywhere. And so I thought, I need to report this. So I called Victoria Dixon's ass. And Jody Jackson. People are following me. What are you guys doing about it? I'm being followed. I'm being followed. And one time it was it's unbelievable. I was driving and I wasn't getting anywhere in terms of communicating with people to get resolution to my case. I was not. And people were chasing me. And I was in Florida visiting my sister Elena. And, or driving by Florida. I don't know if I stopped to visit her or not that incident. But what happened is that she was gone. And yeah, it was when I went to go visit her, and she had a trip to go to, and I was unaware of it. And of course, I had no type of schedule because I was homeless. And so I was just like communicating with freaking ass Victoria Dixon and the ATEC Army people and just trying to figure out how to survive. So I was communicating, and then she was at her place. Well, when I left her place, I was going to head back to my home in Arizona. And they were putting measures in place to start harassment mechanisms and also putting wheels in motion to take my house away. So I thought I need to get to freaking ass Senator John McCain in Washington, D.C. because his ass is doing nothing in freaking ass Phoenix. And so as I was driving, what they would do is they would route me through the GPS as I was on my way towards Washington, D.C. And it would have me driving all over freaking ass Timbuktu, and I wasn't paying attention to my gas tank. I was just following the GPS. And so when I'd look at my tank, it was like almost empty in the freaking ass middle of nowhere. And so, I was driving and they had people trailing me. It was the weirdest thing. I mean, it was pretty frightening for me. And they had people following me. And I would pull over and people would fly past by me. And then I'd get back on the road, and when I was on the road, they were pulled over on the side of the road, and then they would get behind me and fly past by me. And then I would pull over again, and then they would fly past by me, and as I was driving, then they were there and fly past by me. So they would wait till I approach and then get back on the road, fly past by me, and then pull over to the side, wait till I approach, and it was just the weirdest shit. It was weird. They were following me. And I reported it to the freaking ass FBI. And so I'm driving, and the freaking ass GPS is leading me all over freaking ass Timbuktu, and I wasn't paying attention to my gas tank. And so I'm panicking. I'm thinking, okay, let me see if there's any freaking ass gas station around. And so I check, and there was a gas station in this remote location. And so I was almost on empty. And so I'm thinking, thanking God, oh, thank you, God, I'll never not watch the freaking ass gas tank again. And so I drove into this place, and all of a sudden, the entire electricity gets shut down as I'm pulling into this gas station. And somebody shut off the electricity. And so the gas pumps were not working. The electricity was shut off. And so I got out of my car really big because I knew that somebody's ass was going to be behind me because they had been following me for 200 miles. And so I got out of my car really fast and I ran into the gas station, and then she locked the door as I was in the gas station because everything was shut off. And I said, "Can I please come in?" She goes, "Sure, come on in." And I said, "I'm out of gas." And so she let me in, and she locked the door of the gas station, and all the electric around the surrounding town was shut down, including the gas station where I couldn't put gas in my car, and it was pitch black. It was a remote location where there was no exterior lights, and it was pitch black. I mean, you couldn't see in front of your hand. And so I'm sitting here, and slowly, as I'm looking out the window, as I'm in this gas station, and the lady was smart enough to lock it, slowly, a car pulls over right behind my vehicle and shuts its lights off. And somebody gets out and starts snooping around my vehicle. They were looking for me, and they thought I was in the vehicle. And I'm sitting here thinking, more than likely, I probably would have stayed in my car, but something told me, get out of the car, run into that gas station. And I did. I got out of my car really fast. I ran into the gas station, and she immediately locked the door at the gas station. And then these freaking ass people pull up right behind my vehicle that had been passing me, stopped, wait till I pass. They'd pull over, wait till I pass. Then they pull behind me, fly past by me, and were doing this continuously when I was on the road. Now, who in the hell has the authority to shut down the electrical power and shut off the pumps of the gas station? And I don't think it was probably, and which was very coincident because that gas station was getting ready to close like 10 minutes. They were almost closing. So somebody knew that they were going to shut down. But rather than leave the lights on, somebody somewhere within the city shut down the entire lights. And everything was pitch dark. And I was in the room with this woman and another person. I didn't pay attention to the other person because I was watching my car. And 2 minutes late, not even 2 minutes, somebody pulls up right behind my vehicle, stops, and they got out of their car. I seen them because they shut the door. I heard the door shut. I heard the door open, and they shut it. And they were snooping around my vehicle because you could hear them. You talk about freaky scary. You talk about freaky ass scary. And so, I don't know, it took maybe a half hour to get the lights back on. They were looking for me. They thought the store was closed because they didn't come knocking on the door at the store. They did not. And so, I waited with them, and the electricity came on probably about 30 minutes later, maybe 20 minutes later to 30 minutes later. And I asked her, I said, please, I'm out of gas. Can I please just put gas in my car? And she said, sure. So I filled up my freaking ass tank, filled it up. And then what I did also, I was carrying with me a gas tank. A little gas. I filled up the freaking ass little gas tank. And I thought, I'm never going to let this freaking ass vehicle get out of gas again. And more importantly, the GPS was routing me all over the place, purposely trying to get me to run out of gas. And I wasn't paying attention to that. Because it was routing me like, I mean, it even took me to a place that was and it had it on the GPS as though I was going in the right direction. And I had plugged in the address. And it took me to places that were, the street would end and then into a dirt road and a freaking ass high grass that was about 15 feet high, 10 to 15 feet high grass area. And so I was like, when I'd start approaching, I'd immediately turn around and head the opposite direction. I wouldn't even approach the dirt road. I'm like, I'm not getting on that freaking ass road. And so I would turn around and head in a different direction, back the way I came, and get back on the highway. And then I started saying, I'm getting a freaking ass map. And so I'd stop, and the gas stations, they're guilty of this shit. They were taking off all the maps at the gas station. They were taking the maps out. And so I was desperately going to every gas station looking for an atlas. And so I purchased 2 atlases, and then I purchased areas at, maps of the area, if it was 200-mile radius or 300-mile radius. And I started really concentrating on those freaking ass maps in the atlas. And whenever I have plugged something in the GPS and it was routing me somewhere, I'd shut the GPS off, and I'd already be familiar with the roads so that I'd get to the right direction, and I never put myself in that position again. And in the meantime, other times freaking ass helicopters were following me. I mean, I'd go, when I was heading towards Washington, D.C., it's unbelievable. I was heading towards freaking ass Washington, D.C., and then all of a sudden, there was multiple cars following me on the road. And I don't know if the Lord was revealing the difference between the normal cars that were just commuting and cars that were being put in place to follow me. And so as I was heading towards North Carolina, vehicles were following me, and they were very defined vehicles. And so, I thought, this, something's up again. I'm being followed still. And so I stopped into a place in North Carolina, and I saw a police officer passing by. And so I pulled over, and then he pulled over. Not to stop me for anything. He was stopping for coffee. And I stopped for coffee, and I said, "Hey, sir, can I speak to you?" And he's like, What's going on? And I said, "Well, I believe I'm being followed." And I gave him a description of the vehicles. And he's like, "Yeah, she's very precise on the vehicles. She might be being followed." And I said, and here's what I said too. I knew that some of them were police officers in unmarked cars. The Lord just revealed it to me. And so I'm talking to this police officer. I'm thinking, I don't think I'm going to make it to Washington, D.C., man. I'm being followed. They're putting measures in place to stop me. But I was outsmarting these asses. I mean, the Lord was just giving me wisdom. Don't turn in that direction. Turn around. Don't go in that direction. You're heading the wrong way. I mean, it was just like God was right on it when I was being followed. And so here it is. I stopped this police officer, and I'm like, "Sir, I'm being followed." And I believe that some of them may be unmarked cars. And so he's like, he looked alarmed. He looked alarmed. And so he said, "Okay." I said, he goes, "Do you want me to do anything?" "No, I thought I'd just inform you. I figured I'd stop here. And, I should be okay, but I figured I'd report it." And then I gave him the description of the vehicles. And so I get back on the road, get coffee. I went and purchased coffee. And I don't know, we were talking about for like 2 or 3 minutes about bullshit. And I got back into the car. And I started heading back towards Virginia. And I was in North Carolina at the time. In fact, it was around Greensboro, North Carolina. And it's always in isolated areas where they really put the pressure of following somebody. Where it's isolated and there's long distances of miles, probably 50 to 80 miles from one gas station to the next, and it's all trees. And that's when they really shoved all the vehicles to follow me. And so here I get back on the road, and I thought, well, if these assholes see me talking to a police officer, they might think twice. So I get back on the road, and I start driving, and as I was driving, the vehicles that were following me and other vehicles were abandoned on the side of the road. So I'm driving to Washington, D.C., and here I'm driving, and all these freaking ass vehicles were abandoned. All along the sides of the road after I spoke to the police officer in North Carolina. And I'm driving here, and I'm seeing all these freaking ass vehicles parked to the left and the right on the sides of the freaking ass road. And I had my freaking ass Bible on top of the hood of my vehicle. And so, I thought, well, their asses were after me. They abandoned these freaking ass vehicles. And so I'm driving, heading towards Washington, D.C., and I'm running out of money. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm about 200 miles out, and I don't have money for gas. And so I was carrying jewelry with me because I was homeless. And so I stopped into a place and I pawned my jewelry. And I regret pawning. I had rings that my mother gave me. She's passed away now. And some of them were emeralds with diamonds on it. And other was a lot of gold. And it was when gold was popular at the time. The price of gold was going up. And so I turned in a cross that an individual had given me with little diamonds on it. And then other jewelry, whatever I could to get gas in my car to get to freaking ass Washington, D.C. So I pawned everything, but I did not pawn a pink diamond ring in which was given to me when my mother passed away. Somebody stole that at an airport while I was working for Department of Defense in the government in 2007. In fact, October 17th, 2007, they stole that ring from me. A pink diamond in white gold setting. That's another topic. But anyway, so here I am figuring out, shit, I need money for gas. How am I going to do it? And I spent all my freaking ass money on pamphlets. Printing out pamphlets through Staples. Thousands of dollars on pamphlets at Staples. And so I stop into this place and I feel much more relieved because everyone had abandoned the freaking ass vehicles. And I thought, I can now cruise. I'm not being freaking ass followed. And so I get into this place and I turn in all my jewelry. And I don't know how much money they gave me. Maybe, I don't know, $150, $200 if that. Maybe $250. I don't even remember. But it was enough money for gas to get me to where I was going. And so, and then I had an uncle that resides in Virginia, and I thought, well, I can stop at my uncle's place and stay with him as I'm addressing concerns in Washington, D.C. And his wife worked at the Pentagon. And so I approached to Washington, D.C., and as I'm driving all the way to Washington, D.C., there was abandoned vehicles. They abandoned them. On the left and on the right, on the left and on the right, all the way to Washington, D.C., which tells me that these freaking assholes were planning on following me and getting to me all the way to Washington, D.C. in the event that they didn't get me. They'd have somebody they're trailing me. I mean, literally, these vehicles were just abandoned. And I thought, these damn vehicles are probably these cash for clunkers vehicles that Obama put in place. Because they were old freaking ass vehicles. And Obama put in place a program called Cash for Clunkers. And as I'm driving, I'm thinking, these damn vehicles are freaking ass Cash for Clunker vehicles. I bet their asses are. There's no documentation of these freaking ass vehicles. They're old vehicles. And they got all freaking out old tags on these damn vehicles. So I'm driving and I'm looking at paying attention to all these freaking ass vehicles. And that's the first thing that comes to my mind is Cash for Clunker vehicles. That Obama put a program in place to pay people cash for their clunker vehicles. So here I am heading towards Washington, D.C. I stop at this freaking ass pawn place and black people are trailing me. So as soon as I pawn it, 2 black women were behind me. And then they approached the counter. I don't know if my recording's going to stop. So I pawn my rings and I head towards Washington, D.C. and I stop at my uncle's house. And I stayed with my uncle for 3 days as I was at Washington, D.C. And when I got there, I was like, I can't believe I'm alive. I mean, I was just thinking, I wasn't going to be intimidated. And during this time as well, is when vehicles were passing me, there was times where they would fly towards me and they would slam into the rearview mirrors, causing them to retract. And they turn around and look at me as they did it. And they were men, white American men. And some of them military men. I can recognize a military man a mile away. I worked with him for freaking ass 20 years. And so I was driving at one time, on my way, still. And I don't know if my phone is going to run out of charge here. I was driving at another time, and I was heading... Well, let me get back to Washington, D.C. Let me stick to my story. There is just so much that occurred with me. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But anyways, before I got to my uncle's house, I was driving in Virginia, and he lives in Sterling, Virginia, close to Fredericksburg, Falls Church area, and then Washington, D.C. He lives about 30 minutes from Washington, D.C., the White House. About 30 minutes, if that. And it's probably an hour and a half, 2 hours on traffic. Because that traffic is horrific in Washington, D.C. But he lives in, I believe he lives in, I'm not sure if it was Sterling, Virginia. Or near the Falls Church area. Somewhere along there. It's been a while since I've seen him. But anyways, as I was approaching in Washington, D.C., a freaking ass helicopter started following me. And they were flying between trees, between the freaking ass trees and everything. And I thought, what the hell? And so I'm sitting here and I think, they can't be following me. And sure enough, the hell there were. Helicopters. One helicopter. And so I lived as a kid and went to Princess Anne High School in Stafford, Virginia. And my parents owned a home in Stafford at the time. And so I thought, I'm going to see if this chopper follows me. And this was on my way to Washington, D.C. And I had no timeline other than staying alive. That was my timeline, staying freaking ass alive. So I sit here and I thought, I'm going to stop by Stafford, in which I grew up, in which my freaking ass father lives. Brandon's father, my son, he lives in Stafford, Virginia, Fredericksburg area. Or in Fredericksburg, somewhere along that area. But anyway, so I drive up and I I pull into the area and I remembered where I lived as a teenager. 17 years old, 15, 16, 17 years old. And so I'm driving through this area, and I don't know how I remembered the streets because it's changed. There's a lot more houses there than there used to be. It was more country. And so I'm driving through the roads, and, I recognize some of the streets because my ass used to walk freaking ass 14 miles to freaking ass Quantico Pizza Hut to work as a kid. And it was 7 miles from Stafford to Quantico, and from Quantico to Stafford, 7 miles. And so I recognized that place because my little freaking ass would walk when I was freaking ass 80 pounds going to work because my freaking ass parents wouldn't provide transportation. You're walking. So I walked. But anyways, so I'm driving through these freaking ass roads, and the freaking ass helicopter is following me. And it's starting to get heavier vegetation in Virginia. Through Stafford. And so I pull into the area where my house was, in which I resided as a kid. And it's a beautiful little house, and it's country setting. That area is just beautiful. It looks like a picture. So I'm driving in there, and the helicopter is like freaking ass hovering. And it had already been following me probably about, I don't know, maybe 50 miles, 60 miles. Even probably more than that, maybe 80 miles. But anyway, so here I am in Stafford, and so I'm driving down this street on the road in which I resided in Stafford, my residence street. And to the right of the road was the house in which I resided, and across the street was an individual by the name of Bakers that owned a house across the street, and his kids still own it because I stopped to visit them. But anyway, so I kept driving down the street away from the house, and this helicopter is flying around between the trees trying to find me. And then I got out of my vehicle and walked along the road into the wooded area, and this freaking ass helicopter is like hovering over me. And then I thought, yep, their asses are following me. My question is, who are their asses, and why are they following me? So I'm really nervous. I felt very nervous. But I stayed very calm. So I'm walking down the road, and I thought, don't go into the woods. Whatever you do, don't go, just turn around, stay on the street, and walk back to your car. And it was around 3 or 4 in the morning, 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I felt comfortable because I resided there. But I just was, just cautiously, I don't know if I told myself, just don't go into the woods. And they had built a house with a circle around. Before, it used to be all wooded, because I used to go there as a kid and sit for hours enjoying the scenery, beautiful bright orange trees and yellow trees, and just beautiful trees. And as a kid, I would go into the wooded area, and they'd have a little running stream, and then they'd have just a picturesque, beautiful area where I would go and meditate with the Lord. But they built a house there on the right, and it had a circular driveway. And so I'm sitting there, and I thought, okay, and I noticed the people were parked in their yards, and I didn't want to intrude. And then the rest was wooded area where there were other homes, and it was wooded area around the whole area. And so what I did is I turned around and started walking back, but the whole time I was there, the freaking ass helicopter was hovering, staying above me. And so I started walking back, and I thought, why is a helicopter following me? And so I get back in my car, and then I go knock at the neighbor's house across the street from the house that I resided in as a kid, and he was home. And, I was talking to them and just greeted them. And what was strange is their whole house was pitch dark inside. And I found that weird. I didn't say anything to them about it. And I was really good friends with their mom. And I was probably 16, 17 years old at the time, and she was 36. And we were very, very good friends. His mom was. And his mom, and when I turned 18, his mom and I would go out and about and enjoy Washington, D.C. area. And I liked to dance as a kid, and I felt safe around her. And so she would take me out, and she was a mature adult, 36. I was like 18, and we'd go out and enjoy Washington, D.C. But anyway, so I get back, greet them, go back in my car, and head back towards my uncle's house in Washington, D.C. area. And this helicopter's still trailing. And then all of a sudden, the helicopter disappears. And so, you know, I'll stop at that right now in terms of what I've recorded so far. And this was during 2009. And in 2000, it was 2009. So I stand amazed, and I'm going to stop recording now because I'm going to get something to drink. But I stand amazed at my life and what was occurring in my life. And the freaking ass FBI was aware of it because I was freaking ass communicating with the freaking ass FBI. And so was freaking ass Jody Jackson and Victoria Dixon from the Army Test and Evaluation Command. I didn't get into complete details with them in terms of helicopters and all that shit following me. And it wasn't the first time a helicopter followed me. I'm going to stop recording this. And then I'm going to record other things that occurred. I'm just thankful that things are calm today. Even though freaking ass people are doing stupid shit at the pool and other places. And I worry about my grandchildren and what's happening with their lives. But unbelievably, it's a lot calmer, even though there's a lot of noise, compared to what I was experiencing when I was fighting for my rights. And I'm going to stop recording now. My name's Edith Del Carmen Blankenship, and today is June 14, 2018, and I didn't go to the pool today. I wasn't sure about the weather, and so I'm going to take a break from recording, and I might start recording in a little bit while my thoughts are thinking about what has happened in my life over the years, and I'll leave it at that right now.